What happens when Hollywood royalty meets real royalty, and neither is willing to back down? Picture this. Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos are hosting their morning show when Meghan Markle arrives as their guest. But what starts as a routine celebrity interview quickly spirals into television history. The cameras are rolling, millions are watching, and nobody could have predicted what would unfold next. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment below because this story will leave you speechless. The studio lights were blazing as Kelly Ripa adjusted her notes, glancing over at Mark Consuelos, who was checking his earpiece. Their morning show had seen countless celebrities, but today felt different. There was an electric tension in the air that even the production crew could sense. "Welcome back to Live with Kelly and Mark," Kelly announced with her signature bright smile. "We have a very special guest joining us today, someone who needs no introduction but has certainly been making headlines lately. Please welcome Meghan Markle." The audience erupted in applause as Meghan walked onto the set, her posture regal, her smile practiced. She wore a cream-colored blazer that seemed to catch every studio light, and her movements were deliberate, almost choreographed. She settled into the guest chair with the grace of someone accustomed to being watched by millions. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here," Mark said, his voice warm but professional. "It's been quite a journey for you these past few years." "Thank you for having me," Meghan replied, her voice measured. "Though I have to say, I'm a bit surprised by some of the questions I've been getting in pre-interviews. I hope we can keep things respectful here." Kelly's eyebrows raised slightly, a flicker of something crossing her face. "Of course, we always aim for respectful conversations here, though I think our viewers appreciate honesty too." "Honesty?" Meghan repeated, her tone sharpening just a fraction. "That's interesting coming from a show that's built its reputation on celebrity gossip and morning fluff." The studio fell silent for a beat too long. Mark shifted in his chair, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "Well, we do cover a range of topics," he said carefully. "But speaking of honesty, there have been some recent interviews where you've made some pretty serious allegations about your time with the royal family." Meghan's smile never wavered, but her eyes grew colder. "Serious allegations? I shared my truth, Mark, my lived experience. I thought that's what good journalism was supposed to be about, giving people a platform to share their stories." "Absolutely," Kelly interjected. "But when those stories involve accusations against one of the world's most respected institutions, don't you think there's a responsibility to provide evidence? Evidence?" Meghan's voice rose slightly, and for the first time, her composed facade cracked. "You want evidence of emotional abuse? Evidence of racism? Some things can't be measured in documents and photographs." Kelly, the audience was dead quiet now. The usual morning show energy completely evaporated. Camera operators were getting signals from the control room, but everyone seemed frozen by the intensity building between the three people on stage. Mark leaned forward, his journalist instincts kicking in. "But Meghan, you've made claims about conversations regarding your son's skin color, about being denied mental health support. These aren't just personal grievances, they're serious accusations that have damaged relationships and reputations." Damaged relationships. Meghan's composure was slipping fast. "What about the damage done to me, to my family? Do you have any idea what it's like to have an entire institution turn against you?" Kelly's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath. "I think what Mark is getting at is accountability. When you make public statements that affect other people, especially people who can't defend themselves in the same way, there has to be some responsibility there. Can't defend themselves." Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "The royal family has an entire PR machine, centuries of tradition, and unlimited resources. I had my voice, and I used it." "Sit down, please," Mark said, firmly. "We're trying to have a conversation here." "A conversation?" Meghan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This feels more like an ambush. I came here expecting professionalism, not whatever this is." Kelly stood as well, her morning show hostess persona completely gone. "This is professionalism. Real questions about real issues. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan's face flushed, and her hands clenched at her sides. "How dare you question my ability to handle interviews? I've sat across from Oprah, from major journalists, from world leaders, and told different versions of the same story each time." Mark said quietly, but his words carried across the silent studio like a gunshot. That was the moment everything changed. Meghan's eyes flashed with something dangerous, and when she spoke, her voice was low and controlled in a way that was somehow more threatening than shouting. "Different versions? Are you calling me a liar on national television?" The control room was in chaos, producers frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but the raw drama unfolding was too compelling to interrupt. This was television gold, and everyone knew it. Kelly stepped out from behind her desk, facing Meghan directly. "I'm saying that truth should be consistent, and yours seems to change depending on your audience." "My truth doesn't change," Meghan shot back. "But apparently your ability to show basic human decency does." Mark tried to de-escalate, standing and positioning himself between the two women. "Look, let's all take a breath here. We're getting off track." But Meghan spun toward him, her finger pointing accusingly. "Off track. This is exactly on track, Mark. This is what happens when people can't handle a woman speaking her truth, when they'd rather tear her down than listen." "Nobody's tearing you down," Kelly said, her voice rising. "We're asking legitimate questions that millions of people want answers to." "Legitimate questions?" Meghan's laugh was bitter. "You want to know what's legitimate? The fact that I'm standing here being attacked by two people who have never faced a fraction of the scrutiny I've endured." The studio audience was completely still, some looking uncomfortable, others leaning forward in fascination. This was unlike anything that had ever happened on daytime television. Mark's jaw tightened. "Attacked? We're doing our jobs, Meghan. We're journalists, not your personal cheerleading squad." "Journalists. You're entertainment hosts who got lucky with a time slot. Don't confuse yourselves with real reporters." That hit a nerve. Kelly's face flushed red, and her voice went cold. "Real reporters? Like the ones who've been following up on your stories and finding inconsistencies." "What inconsistencies?" Meghan demanded, stepping closer to Kelly. "Name one." The tension was so thick it was almost visible, crackling between them like electricity. The crew was getting hand signals from the control room, but nobody wanted to be the one to interrupt this historic meltdown. Kelly's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer to Meghan, her voice cutting through the studio silence like a blade. "You want inconsistencies? Let's start with your wedding. First, you said you had a private ceremony 3 days before the public one. Then, when pressed for details, you backtracked and called it a spiritual union. Which was it, Meghan?" Meghan's face went pale, then flushed red. "That's a private matter between my husband and me." "Private?" Kelly's voice rose. "You brought it up in a globally televised interview watched by 50 million people. You don't get to claim privacy now." Mark could see this was spiraling out of control, but he also recognized compelling television when he saw it. "Meghan, Kelly has a point. If you're going to make public statements, they need to be accurate. Accurate according to whom?" Meghan spun to face him, her composure completely shattered now. "According to the same institution that leaked stories about me to the press for years, the same family that refused to protect me from racist attacks." "Nobody's defending racist attacks," Kelly said firmly, "but you've also made claims about your sister-in-law that have been disputed by multiple sources." "My sister-in-law?" Meghan's voice went dangerously quiet. "You mean the woman who made me cry at my own wedding rehearsal, and then let the press blame me for making her cry?" "See, that's exactly what I'm talking about," Kelly pressed on, sensing she had hit something. "First, the story was that you made her cry, then you flipped it and said she made you cry. Which version are we supposed to believe?" Meghan's hands were shaking now. Whether from rage or emotion, it was impossible to tell. "I told the truth about what happened. The palace spin machine created the other version. But you didn't correct it for 3 years, Mark pointed out. 3 years of letting people believe something you claim was a lie." "Why?" "Because I was trying to protect her," Meghan shouted, her voice echoing through the studio. "I was trying to be the bigger person, to follow their rules about never explaining, never complaining. And look where it got me." The studio audience gasped collectively at the outburst. This was raw, unfiltered emotion playing out in real time, and everyone could feel the authentic fury radiating from Meghan. "So you protected her for 3 years, but then decided to throw her under the bus on international television. That doesn't sound like protection, Meghan. That sounds like revenge." "Revenge?" Meghan's voice cracked on the word. "You think I destroyed my relationships, my reputation, my peace of mind for revenge?" You think I put my children at risk for revenge. I think you put your children at risk the moment you decided to air your family's private business on television, Kelly shot back. And I think you're still doing it every time you give another interview. The words hit Meghan like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her hand going to her chest. How dare you bring my children into this? How dare you question my decisions? As a mother, Mark stepped forward, trying to regain control. Nobody's questioning your abilities as a mother, but Kelly raises a valid point about privacy and protection. Valid point. Meghan whirled on him, tears now visible in her eyes, but her voice still strong. You want to talk about protection? Where was the protection when I was getting death threats? Where was the protection when I was having suicidal thoughts and begged for help? The studio fell into stunned silence. This was beyond entertainment now. This was a human being in genuine distress, and everyone could feel it. Kelly's voice softened slightly, but she didn't retreat. Meghan, if you were really having those thoughts, if you were really in that much pain, then I'm sorry, but using that pain to hurt other people isn't the answer. Hurt other people. Meghan's voice was incredulous. I shared my experience. If that hurt people, maybe they should examine why the truth is so painful for them. The truth, Mark repeated. But that's the issue, isn't it? Your truth seems to shift depending on what serves your narrative at the moment. Meghan's jaw dropped. My narrative? You think this is all some calculated plan? You think I destroyed my life, left my family, gave up everything I knew for a narrative? I think you made choices, Kelly said bluntly, and now you're trying to rewrite history to make those choices seem like everyone else's fault. The accusation hung in the air, like a bomb that had just exploded. Meghan stood there, mouth open, staring at Kelly in complete shock. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak at all. When she finally found her voice, it was barely above a whisper, but somehow more powerful than all her previous shouting. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have absolutely no idea what it's like to be me. You're right, Kelly replied, her voice equally quiet but unyielding. I don't know what it's like to be you, but I know what it's like to be in this industry for decades, and I know manipulation when I see it. That word, manipulation, seemed to break something in Meghan. Her composure, which had been cracking throughout the interview, finally shattered. Completely manipulation, she screamed, her voice raw and desperate. Everything I've been through, everything I've suffered, and you call it manipulation. The control room was in absolute chaos now. Producers were screaming at each other about whether to cut away. Legal was being called, and the phones were ringing off the hook. But the cameras kept rolling. Mark tried one more time to restore order. Meghan, please, let's just take a moment to breathe here. But Meghan was beyond reason now. She turned on him with the fury of someone who had been pushed past their breaking point. Don't you dare patronize me, Mark. Don't you dare stand there and tell me to breathe while your wife accuses me of manipulating my own trauma. I'm not patronizing you, Mark said firmly. I'm trying to have an adult conversation, but you're making that impossible. Adult conversation? Meghan laughed hysterically. This stopped being an adult conversation the moment you decided to ambush me with accusations and conspiracy theories. Kelly had heard enough. Her morning show host persona was completely gone now, replaced by someone who had clearly reached the end of her patience. Nobody ambushed you, Meghan. We asked you questions that any responsible journalist would ask. If you can't handle that, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Maybe I shouldn't be doing interviews, Meghan repeated slowly, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. Or maybe I shouldn't be doing interviews with people who have already made up their minds about me before I even walk through the door. We didn't make up our minds, Mark protested. We looked at the evidence, the inconsistencies in your statements, the damage your accusations have caused. Evidence, Meghan spat. Inconsistencies, damage. Those are interesting words coming from two people who make their living gossiping about celebrities and selling breakfast cereal. The insult hit its mark. Both Kelly and Mark visibly bristled, and the atmosphere in the studio became even more charged. Kelly's voice went ice cold. At least we're honest about what we do, Meghan. We don't pretend to be victims while we're attacking people who can't fight back. Can't fight back? Meghan's voice rose to a near shriek. The royal family can't fight back. They have literally centuries of power and privilege, and I'm just one woman with a microphone. one woman with a microphone who has done more damage to that institution in 2 years than its enemies have managed in decades. Kelly fired back. The words seemed to echo through the studio, and suddenly Meghan went very, very still. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, but filled with a cold fury that was somehow more frightening than her previous outbursts. So that's what this is really about. You're not concerned about truth or consistency or protecting anyone. You're upset that I dared to challenge the precious royal family. You're upset that I didn't just smile and take it like a good little duchess. Kelly's face flushed deeper red at Meghan's accusation, and for a moment, the mask of professional composure slipped completely. Don't you dare try to make this about protecting some institution. This is about you taking responsibility for your actions instead of playing the victim every time someone questions your story. Playing the victim. Meghan's voice was barely controlled. Fury now, each word deliberate and sharp. I am the victim, Kelly. I was the one who was isolated, attacked, driven to the point of desperation. But apparently in your world, victims aren't allowed to speak up without being accused of manipulation. Mark could see this was beyond salvaging, but he made one final attempt at damage control. Look, both of you need to step back. This has gotten completely out of hand. But Meghan ignored him completely, her attention laser-focused on Kelly. You want to know what I think this is really about? I think you're threatened by me. I think you can't stand that someone walked away from the fairy tale you've spent your whole career selling to housewives. The audience gasped audibly. That was a direct hit, and everyone knew it. Kelly's morning show empire was built on exactly that kind of aspirational fantasy, and Meghan had just called it out brutally and publicly. Kelly's voice went deadly quiet. Threatened by you. Meghan, I built this career over decades of hard work, real relationships, and genuine connection with people. You had everything handed to you on a silver platter and threw it away because it wasn't enough attention. Handed to me? Meghan's voice cracked with disbelief. I worked for everything I had before I met Harry. I had my own career, my own life, my own identity, and I gave it all up for a family that never wanted me there in the first place. Then why did you stay for 2 years? Kelly pressed. If it was so terrible, if they were so awful to you, why didn't you leave immediately? Meghan paused, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across her face. Because I loved him. Because I thought I could make it work. Because I believed their promises that things would get better. And when you realized you couldn't control the narrative the way you wanted, you ran, Kelly said coldly. You took their money, their titles, their protection, and then you sat down with their biggest competitor and tried to destroy them. I didn't try to destroy anyone, Meghan shouted, her composure completely gone now. I shared my truth, my experience, what happened to me. Your truth, Mark repeated, his voice heavy with skepticism. But truth should be verifiable. Truth should be consistent, and yours keeps changing every time you tell it. Meghan spun to face him, her eyes blazing. My truth is consistent. What changes is how much of it I'm willing to share with people who have already decided I'm lying. We haven't decided anything, Kelly said firmly, but we're not going to sit here and let you rewrite history without asking questions. Questions? Meghan laughed bitterly. These aren't questions, Kelly. This is a character assassination disguised as journalism. This is journalism, Kelly shot back. Real journalism asks hard questions. It doesn't just accept whatever narrative someone wants to sell. Narrative? Meghan's voice rose to a near scream again. You keep using that word like I'm some kind of master manipulator, instead of a woman who survived something traumatic and found the courage to speak about it. Courage? Kelly's voice was incredulous now. You call it courage to sit in a $75 million mansion and complain about how hard your life was in a palace. The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this unprecedented meltdown with a mixture of fascination and horror. This was television history being made in real time. Meghan stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but filled with a cold rage that was somehow more powerful than all her previous shouting. You know what, Kelly? You've made your position very clear. You've decided that my pain doesn't matter, that my experience doesn't count, that everything I went through was somehow my own fault. I've decided that actions have consequences, Kelly replied steadily. And your actions have had consequences for a lot of people beyond yourself. My actions, Meghan's voice was barely above a whisper now, but it carried across the silent studio like a threat. What about their actions? What about the racism, the lies, the complete abandonment when I needed help the most? Even if all of that is true, Mark interjected, it doesn't justify what you've done since. What I've done since? Meghan turned on him with renewed fury. You mean survive? You mean build a new life for my family? You mean refuse to be silenced? I mean exploit your connection to them for financial gain, while simultaneously trying to destroy their reputation? Mark said bluntly. The words hung in the air like a final accusation. Meghan stared at him in shock, her mouth opening and closing without sound. For a moment, she looked genuinely stunned that someone had said it so directly. When she finally found her voice, it was shaking with emotion. Financial gain. You think I put my family through hell, gave up my home, my security, my relationships, for money. I think you found a way to monetize your victimhood, Kelly said coldly, and you're angry that people are starting to see through it. That was the final straw. Meghan's face went white, then red, then white again. She stood there, trembling with rage, and when she spoke, her voice was barely human. How dare you? How dare you stand there and reduce everything I've been through to a business transaction? How dare you minimize my pain, my trauma, my children's safety, for your entertainment? Your children's safety, Kelly's voice was sharp. You're the one who put them in the spotlight, Meghan. You're the one who keeps bringing them into this. I'm protecting them, Meghan screamed. I'm making sure they grow up knowing their mother fought back, that she didn't just accept abuse and racism and lies. You're traumatizing them, Kelly screamed back, completely losing control now. You're teaching them that family loyalty doesn't matter, that you can burn down relationships whenever things don't go your way. The two women were facing each other now like fighters in a ring, both breathing heavily, both beyond reason. Mark stepped between them, his voice cutting through the chaos. That's enough, both of you, that's enough. But Meghan pushed past him, getting right in Kelly's face. You don't know anything about my children or my family. You don't know anything about what I've sacrificed or what I've survived. I know enough, Kelly said coldly, not backing down an inch. I know you're standing in my studio, on my show, attacking my professionalism because you can't handle being asked real questions. Your show? Meghan's voice was dangerous now. Your show that profits off celebrity gossip and morning fluff. Your show that built its success on the same tabloid culture that nearly destroyed me. My show that I've earned through 30 years of work, Kelly fired back. My show that I built on honesty and real connections with people, not manufactured drama and victim narratives. Manufactured. Meghan was shaking with rage now. You think my trauma is manufactured? You think my children's safety is manufactured? I think your version of events is manufactured, Kelly said with deadly precision. I think you've crafted a story that makes you the hero and everyone else the villain, and you can't handle anyone questioning it. Meghan stood there for a long moment, staring at Kelly with pure hatred in her eyes. The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold and controlled. You know what, Kelly? You're right about one thing. This is your show, and I don't want to be on it anymore. She turned to walk away, but Kelly's voice stopped her cold. Good, because you're not welcome here anymore anyway. Meghan froze, then slowly turned back around. What did you say? Kelly stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had just made a decision. I said you're not welcome on this show anymore. This interview is over, and you need to leave. The studio erupted in shocked murmurs from the audience. Mark looked stunned, clearly not expecting his wife to go this far, but Kelly stood firm, her jaw set with determination. Meghan stared at her in disbelief. You're kicking me off your show. I'm protecting my show, Kelly said firmly. I'm protecting my audience from having to watch someone manipulate and attack people while playing the victim. You can leave voluntarily, or security can escort you out. For a moment, Meghan looked like she might fight back, might escalate this even further. But then something seemed to break in her. Her shoulders sagged, and when she spoke, her voice was defeated. Fine, you've made your choice. But don't pretend this was about journalism or truth, or protecting anyone. This was about power, and you just proved that you're exactly like everyone else who silenced me. She turned and walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against the studio floor in the deathly silence. But just before she reached the door, she turned back one final time. "You know what the real tragedy is, Kelly? I actually respected you once. I thought you were different, but you're just another person who can't handle a woman who refuses to be quiet." And with that, Meghan Markle walked off the set, leaving. Behind the most explosive morning show interview in television history, Kelly stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, before turning back to the cameras. Her voice was shaky but determined as she addressed the audience. "We'll be right back after this commercial break." But everyone knew that nothing would ever be quite the same after what they had just witnessed. The morning show landscape had just been permanently altered, and the reverberations would be felt for years to come. The cameras finally cut away, but the damage was done. The most dramatic celebrity interview meltdown in television history was complete, and the world would be talking about it for months to come. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Have you ever seen anything like this on daytime television before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible celebrity stories that you won't believe actually happened.